opened the door to do that online, and perhaps in future, I'll be able to visit Canada and minister with him. I am in Western Kenya right now. I normally live in Nairobi, and I'm in Western Kenya right now. We came to bury the mother of a colleague, and that's why I'm in a different setting from my normal setting, but I'm glad that we can still connect. As Brother also just said, I am passionate about raising godly families. And before I get deep into our discussion this evening, I say evening because it's 8 o'clock here in Nairobi. When you think about the growth of the church, I know that there are parts of the world where churches are completely full and you can hardly find a space to sit. There are parts of the world where they're investing a lot of money in crusades to win people for Christ. There are a lot of parts of the world where money is being invested in the media to win people for Christ. But did you know that only about 1% of those who come to Christ do so through large crusades? Did you know that only about 1% of people who come to Christ do so through the media? And did you know that 18 to 30% come to Christ through the local church? Now you may be wondering, so how do the rest come to Christ? They do so through families and networks of relationships. Even those who come to Christ in the church, usually they're introduced to the church by their parents or a colleague. Even those who go to crusades and receive Christ, they are usually taken by a colleague. You will find that a lot of money is spent on crusades and media. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. If God has called you to do that, run with it. But very little money is spent on coaching parents on how to advance the gospel through their families and networks of relationships. And yet, that's the most productive way to advance the gospel. If you go to the other faiths, the one mentioned by name, but the faith that began 600 years after our faith, they do not spread the gospel primarily by evangelism. They spread it by raising families of their faith. And we've been studying those models and asking ourselves, why are Christians not focusing on raising a godly generation and reaching out to your network of relationships and bringing those to the Lord? Just tell yourself this: if I bring 3 people to the world by physical birth, why can I not trust God to bring at least 3 more every 2 years into the kingdom of God? And all of us have that capacity. All we need is some training. And if every believer made it a goal in his life to bring in 3 or 4 others every 2 years, it's a very small number, by the way, but our numbers will grow in leaps and bounds. The biggest challenge is that we don't know what to do. The average Christian does not know how to share the gospel. Now, I'm speaking this way because when we begin to look at the whole subject of parenting, this is where it all begins. And maybe in our future talk, I will focus on the whole area of advancing the gospel through families and networks of relationships. But today, I'm talking about how your growing up years affect your parenting. And I want us to process that together, because many people think that parenting is what you do with your children. Now, a part of it is true, what you do is important, but the more important thing is who you are to your children. Who you are overrides what you do. I'm pausing intentionally for that to sink in, because children are learning even when parents are not teaching. And what you are to those children, you reproduce in them. They will override what you teach them, but what they see you practice will remain in their minds. Brother Lusoji has already told us a bit about my background. That's a picture of my wife and I. This was taken a few weeks ago in Austin, Texas, where we were there spending some time with our son. Please confirm the pictures are coming out clear. Brother Lusoji, please confirm that they are coming out clear.
Yes, they are.
Wonderful. That's my wife and I. We've been married for the last 35 years, and we have 3 children that we've raised by God's grace. Right here is our son on the left, on my left. That's our middle child, and the young lady with a scarf on her head, that's Christy, our youngest child. Christy is 23 and just graduated from business school and is working at a law firm in San Antonio, Texas. Michael, our middle son, is working in Austin in a company that does software engineering, and he does events for that company. And this picture here is of our son-in-law, Tony, and our daughter, Christy, our firstborn. Christy and Tony got married in August of 2019, and they have a lovely daughter called Abigail. Abigail was born at the end of December 2020, and she's just about 3 months old. So we were in Ohio visiting them, went down to Texas, spent time with our other 2 children, and came back to Kenya about 10 days ago. We give our seminars in different settings. This picture was taken in Kampala, Uganda, a couple of years ago, in the living room of a person in the home of one of our contacts there. We gathered in the home early morning on a Sunday morning before people could go to church. And we had about 30 or 35 parents, and they wanted to know how to raise teenagers. And we spent some time, and for 2 hours, spent time in the scriptures and showed them what God's expectation is. And we've had these meetings in different settings, online, visiting different countries. We've been to South Africa, to Madagascar, Madagascar, yes, Zambia, and we've been to Nigeria, and we've been to Rwanda, and God is expanding this frame of thinking about the centrality of the family in the advance of the gospel. Now, what I'm going to do is to share about the thoughts about our background affecting how we raise our children. Now, friends, the relationships that we have with our parents during our growing up years, these relationships form the template of all our subsequent relationships. If you grow up with an angry parent,
Sorry? Oh, okay.
If you grow up with an angry parent, it will affect the way you relate to them and the way you relate to other people. If you grow up with parents who are absent, it affects the way you parent your children and the way you perceive what parenting is all about. You will perceive success in different terms apart from success in relationships, which is how God looks at success. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning, who you are to your children shapes who they become. And I'm going to be looking at 4 different styles of parenting. Now, Kenyan men, an average man is an angry man. This is true whether it's Kenya or outside Kenya. If you're not angry, you're not average. God has done a work in your heart. And this anger is waiting for an opportunity to express itself. When you're in traffic, it will express itself. And I'm talking about the Kenyan roads. I don't know about Canada, and I don't know about Norway. I don't know about the Nigerian in the US. I don't know if this is true of you, but anger is waiting for an opportunity to express itself. And then we say, so and so made me angry. The reality is that nobody makes you angry. Ecclesiastes talks about, do not be eager in your heart to be angry, for anger resides in the bosom of fools. That's Ecclesiastes 7:9. It resides in the bosom of fools. It takes residence in the bottom of fools. It lives in the bottom of fools. So when you say, my child make me angry, the thing that your child did was simply to reveal the anger that was already there. Now that's a harsh reality, and many of us do not want to admit that. We would rather blame somebody else for making us angry. But the anger that you have within you was picked up along the way in your growing up years. And now it's being revealed in your marriage, it's being revealed in your child raising, it's being revealed in your place of work. And you may be an efficient worker, but you struggle in relationships. And God is calling you today to examine your relationships. Now, impressions formed early in life, when we are vulnerable, continue into adult life. These impressions are treated as if they are facts. So if your father tells you, you should never go to Brother Jimmy's house because his wife is a witch, you won't go. You don't even have to test that story. You will not go. But years later, when you're in college with Uncle Jimmy's children, your cousins, and you discover they are lovely children, they are actually very nice people, you begin to ask yourself, I thought your mother was a witch. Only to discover that your father and Uncle Jimmy never used to get along in their growing up years. And Uncle Jimmy was doing extremely well and is very successful, and your father was jealous of him. Therefore, he did not want you to associate with him. But you see, you believed those impressions as if they were factual until a time comes when you test them. And many of us go through life without ever testing the impressions that we receive. The best test of God, of course, is using the word of God. But many people say they are Christians, but they don't refer to the scriptures in their day-to-day living. Do you have a neighbor who's guilty of this? I'm not asking about you. I'm just asking about your neighbor. Your neighbor who says they are a believer, but in their day-to-day relationships, there is no reference to God. Okay, let me keep moving forward. So this morning, which is morning in some parts of the world, it is afternoon in Canada and evening in Kenya, I'll speak to you about how your growing years affect your parenting. Now, we are all products of our past, but the future need not depend on that past. Why? Because we can make decisions today that affect the future. Today will be referred to as the past 10 years from now. I know people who had a wonderful past. Their parents were Christians. Some of them were even clergy, and they worked hard. They lived a frugal life to make sure their children went to very good schools. But in those schools, they mixed with other children from backgrounds where their lives were, they just left to raise themselves. And pretty soon, these wonderfully raised children got caught up in this whole act of peer pressure, succumbed to the pressure of drugs and alcohol. And today, even though they came from a good background, they are struggling with their lives. If a name comes to mind, write it down, because you'll have a time of interaction and you can share that story. Then there are others who came from a shameful past. I know of a man whose mother was a prostitute, his father was a thief, and spending time in jail. And that background should spell disaster for that man. But there are other people who stepped in, and that man is walking with God today, not because of his background, but in spite of his background, because someone spotted him along the way and helped him to make decisions that were consistent with a walk with God, so that his past did not have to follow him to the future. But friends, if we do nothing about our past, it will follow us to the future. So as I share these thoughts this morning, or this evening, or whatever time it is, reflect on the home in which you were raised. Ask yourself, what kind of person did I become as a result of my upbringing? For some, it'll be a very sad realization that although your home was financially successful, it was actually very dysfunctional. If you have children, and I always put the if, because I know that as a number of people who join these parenting workshops and don't have children, they're trusting God for children. Some of them join them because they work with children. If you have children, your raising of those children is being influenced by the way you were raised until you get a chance to be able to interrogate it. I'll talk about 4 different approaches to parenting. The first is the dominant parent. The second, I'll call them the negligent parent. The third, the permissive. And those first 3 are dysfunctional. The fourth, which I'm going to focus on, we're going to call it the loving but firm parent. I've intentionally left out psychological terms used to describe this type of parent because those terms can be very confusing. I'm using terminology that you can all relate to. So let's talk for a moment about the dominant parent, sometimes referred to as the authoritarian parent. Here are some synonyms of the word authoritarian. They are strict, they are severe, they're demanding, they're controlling, they are rigid, they are dictatorial. Now, these parents have very high standards and very high expectations of their children. Now, that's a good thing. I think we all ought to have high standards and high expectations. But these parents are not available to offer the warm and caring support that's needed to make their children succeed in their relationships. When I say they are not available, I do not mean that they are missing in action. Some of them come home every single evening, but they are distant emotionally from their children. They don't know how to connect them. They have few explanations to the rigid rules of the home. Their biggest emphasis is discipline. They have high expectations and they emphasize performance. In the process, they push their children really hard. Do you have a neighbor like that? Some of you are thinking, but that's how I was raised and I succeeded. Hang in there, hang in there. Colossians 3:21 says, fathers, do not aggravate your children or they'll become discouraged. Notice it doesn't say parents, it says fathers. Fathers, do not aggravate your children. Why? They will become discouraged. Dominant parents often provoke their children to anger, and these children become discouraged. Now, I want you to share with me what a discouraged 2-year-old looks like. You can unmute and share very briefly, or just send me some charts, and I'll have Brother Lusoji read through some of those charts. What does a discouraged 2-year-old look like? What does a discouraged 12-year-old look like? What does a discouraged 18-year-old look like? I'm going to pause and get some response from you. You can either unmute and speak, or just send some charts to us.
Well, I suppose that a discouraged 2-year-old may probably reject meals and be picky or choosy about what he or she eats.
Okay.
A discouraged 12-year-old may be reluctant to go to church with the parents, would probably not want to attend the children's church, and will also not be particularly excited about being in the adult church either. And a discouraged 18-year-old will exhibit symptoms of rebellion. I'm an adult now, I don't have to listen to what you say, can make my own decisions and live with it.
Thank you. My screen doesn't show me who is talking, so but that's a very good contribution. Let's take one more, maybe two more. What are your thoughts about a discouraged 2-year-old, 12-year-old, 18-year-old? And remember, you can also send your response by chat. There's no wrong answer. So please, let's get engaged with this. A discouraged 2-year-old. Yes, ma'am.
On the chat group, Christiana says, a discouraged 2-year-old will throw tantrums. A discouraged 18-year-old will be rebellious and withdrawn. And Kemi says a 12-year-old that is rebellious will be rebellious and unwilling to see your point of view.
Yes.
And 18-year-old will be silent and withdrawn.
Now, let me pick on those two things. On the one hand, rebellious. On the other hand, silent and withdrawn. Those are two extremes of the same continuum. What's the common factor with these two children? The one who is quiet and withdrawn, and the one who is rebellious. I'll tell you what it is. They are both very angry. The one who is withdrawn has turned the anger towards themselves, and the withdrawal could easily lead into depression. The one who is rebellious and aggressive has turned that anger towards other people and can become violent. So the rebellious could easily kill other people. The withdrawn can easily kill themselves. The Lord said, you have heard it was said, thou shalt not murder. But I say to you, if you are angry with your brother, you are guilty of murder. Fathers, do not aggravate your children, or they'll become discouraged. Let me speak a little bit more, and I want to hear a testimony from a father who was aggravated by his father in just a moment. So let me just go on a little bit more and describe the home of this particular boy growing up. Little Kofi comes home. He's 12 years old. He's not so little. He's got 84% in math. Little Kofi is from Ghana. And he's got a wonderful Ghanaian
We can't hear you, doctor.
Did somebody mute me?
No, we can. No.
We can hear you.
We can hear him.
We can hear him.
Oh, we didn't hear him for a while.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Wonderful.
Now.
So you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
We can hear you
I can hear him. I can also hear him.
So 12-year-old Kofi comes home. He's being raised by wonderful parents. They are successful with every measure that the world measures success. He comes home with 84% in math. And he says, Daddy, I got 84% in math. Now tell me, parents, what's Kofi's expectation?
He will be, he will be encouraged, he will be applauded, he will be, celebrated.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what he expects. But what does Kofi get when he's raised in a dominant parent home? 16%. Where did you throw the remaining 84%? Where did you throw 16%? Huh? I'm not raising fools in this house. Now, the father's intention is to help Kofi with his performance. But children do not hear our intentions. They hear our words. They see our facial expressions. They see our body language. So the father has failed to pass his intention across. What did the boy hear? What's wrong with me? How come I don't have 16%? My father doesn't raise fools. I must be a fool. That's what the boy is hearing. And the father says, who had the highest? Oh, and woe to that boy if he says it was Jennifer. Huh? Jennifer, you were beaten by a girl. What's wrong with you? Now the boy is thinking, something's wrong with me. Next time you beat that girl, huh? And so the boy goes back and works hard. He works really hard. And he comes back with 96%. And the moment he brings 96%, he says, Daddy, I had 96%. What's his expectation? He expects well done. But what's dominant father's first question? How much did Jennifer get? That's his first question. And woe to the boy if Jennifer had 98%. I told you, you're gonna beat that girl. Final exam, he has 100%. You can't improve on that. He puts the paper where his father can see it. His father notices the paper and says nothing. During dinner, his wife turns to him and says, hey, did you see Kofi's paper? He says, yeah, I saw it. Hey, Kofi, how many others had 100%? And he says, there were 6 of us, Dad, including Jennifer. By saying including Jennifer, he expects his dad to be impressed. What does that say? That was an easy exam. In my time, we don't have 6 people getting 100%. Dad is an executive in the company where he works. He doesn't notice the tear coming down his son's face. The son has to be excused, go to the bathroom, washes his face, and comes back and eats his meal in complete silence. Does that sound like your neighbor's home? Is your neighbor by chance in this meeting? Let me go back to my slides. Let me paint another picture. This is a picture of a 16-year-old daughter who comes home and says, Mommy, there's going to be a party at school. Now, this 16-year-old's mother is 34. The moment she said there's a party at school, the mother reacts. You are not going to that party. And I don't want to hear any more about this matter. We're not talking about this party. And the mother's reaction exceeds what the child expected. Mama, you sound angry. Don't talk to me now. You're not going to that party. But Mommy, even Grace will be there. Now, Grace is the wonderful girl in the neighborhood who is highly respected. And your daughter is invoking Grace's name, if perchance you might change your mind. But Mom says, we're not talking about this. Now, why is Mommy so angry? You see, Mom is 34. She was raised in a home where she was taught how to live life. It's a very strict home, very orderly home, not a harsh environment, very good home. And mom, when she was 16, almost turning 17, asked her parents permission to go to a party. And they gave her permission. And she says, Mom, Dad, I won't be coming home tonight. I'll be spending time at a friend's house. And she mentioned the name of a friend who was known to the family. The parents were not disturbed by that. They reminded her of what to do in that party. Don't take any drink that you did not see being opened. Don't take any alcohol. Always have 2 or 3 girls watching out for you, and always work together as a team, because terrible things can happen at parties. Yes, Mama. Well, she went to the party, and it was a wonderful party. There was a bowl with some fruit juice in it, a punch. She took a drink of it, like everybody else. All the girls were taking it. She didn't know it was only the girls taking it. It was sweet. She couldn't quite place what fruit it was. And this young lady woke up the next morning and has no memory of how the party went. She woke up in a bed at her friend's house where she expected to spend the night. She had no memory of how the party ended. 2 months later, she discovered she was pregnant. Her parents were so embarrassed by the whole thing. They sent her off to her aunt's house to be taken care of there until the child should be born. It ended up being a daughter, beautiful daughter. The parents could not bear to have their 16, 17-year-old pregnant in their house because it would be a bad image for them. They were concerned about their social standing. Now, this is the daughter who is now 16 and is asking her mother, can I go to a party? And the moment the word party is mentioned, the memory of 16, 17-years ago comes back. And the mother is almost hysterical. You are not going to that party. What's mom's intention? Mom's intention is to protect the daughter from what she went through. You see, mom is not the only one who got pregnant that night. 3 other girls did, all from very decent homes. To date, mom does not know the father to her daughter. In responding harshly, mom is trying to protect her daughter. But remember, children don't know our intentions. They know, they hear our words, they see our body language, and they draw their conclusions. In the meantime, this child is growing. See, children raised in an environment like this will tend to rank low in self-esteem. The parents are always barking at them. And some of them will shrink back in the first 10 years or 11 years. But when they become teenagers, they fight back. They have a broken spirit. They climb up like a bearing that's unable to rotate. And eventually they cease, they rebel. These children reject the ideals of their parents. These children, when they go to school, they attract other children from similar families. Now, some of you are thinking, I know such a person, raised by very decent, successful parents, but they tend to hang out with rebellious children, and I don't know why. Perhaps you do know why right now. Because this child from this successful family may actually be having a very pushy father. A father who has pushed them to discouragement. They may be doing well academically, but they are struggling deep inside. This child may be loud and defiant, always demanding his rights, because when he speaks in a normal voice, nobody ever pays attention to him. This child may one day make a terrible parent. Notice I did not say they will one day make a terrible parent, but they may one day. And I'm putting the may sort of the will because God can step in and by his grace can turn things around. You see, this child has grown up. He doesn't like the way he was raised. I say he, but it could be a she. They have picked up baggage along the growing up years. They are discouraged. They don't know how to live life. Let's pause for a moment and process this together. How were you raised? What kind of person did you become? How did your siblings turn out? Now, we've only talked about 1 out of 4 parents, so I don't want everybody to share at this point. I only want those who are raised in that kind of environment. Just 2 or 3 of you, let's hear from you. Unmute and speak to us and make it very, very brief. Anybody raised like this? Silence. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Would anybody willing to share if they are raised like that? Or maybe let's make it, let me give you a soft landing. Do you know of a neighbor who was raised like that? Nobody. I'll wait for 30 more seconds because I'm sure there's one. And you may be afraid to say it, thinking that you don't want to accuse your parents. This is not a time for accusing. This is now a time to take stock. Some of you are thinking, yeah, my dad was a bit like that, but not quite like that. If you're a little bit like that, I want to hear from you.
I wasn't there actually, but I could see traces of things like that.
Tell me about it.
Oh, well, the mom was not around. I think she left when she saw that the dad was, being promiscuous. And it's now, coming to light when that person is married with children. So, of course, if you see that kind of thing, you know that where he's coming from, the upbringing will be a very harsh one.
Yes.
So if the parents are not together, maybe the mom left stupidly when she saw that the dad was being cheating or something, right? And of course, the woman that he's cheating with brings her in when the actual legal wife left. Of course, the woman coming in would not treat the children nicely, right? So the children will grow up to become, really bitter and angry. So I didn't see it growing up. I wasn't with that person growing up, but I could see the after effect.
Okay.
That's my contribution.
Okay. And there may be other factors at play there, because we'll be talking about negligent parents just a moment, but there may be some other plays there. Anybody else with a very dominant father? Very hard to please that father. He's a good father. He tried the best, but really, you and your children, your siblings are pretty discouraged. Anybody willing to share that story? I know they're there. Your father would come in and you'd all scatter. You pretend you're doing your homework because that's what he expected you to be doing.
Well, if I may share.
Yes.
Not particularly, I don't know if I thought majority of people in my circle. So if we see our dad used to be coming from afar, we just run back into the house and just, settle in like we never left for the hours he has been away. I don't know if, so that's the expectation that we must have been studying or just being indoors and being the good children, whereas we weren't. We were out in the neighborhood, and then there'll be signals coming. Your dad's coming down the road, and then we all run back in, we signal to each other. And, he meets us in a place where he thinks we should be.
What would happen if he met you in a place where he did not think you should be? What would happen to you?
Oh, there'll be consequences, especially for my brother. So he used to not make it in time to be in the proper place. So he'll get maybe beaten if he forgot the timing. So he'll get some smacks.
So you all devised a method of escaping his punishments while living a rebellious life.
Basically, yes.
Yes, I'm putting it very plainly because
Yeah.
if he asks you to study and you refuse to study, you go do your own thing. But when he comes back, you want to pretend that you're doing what he expects you to do. And you're doing that to win his approval.
Exactly.
Now tell me, how did your brothers turn out? Because you said you get consequences, especially for the brothers, for the young men. How did they turn out?
Well, he's turned out okay. He's a law-abiding citizen.
Okay.
I don't know if it has anything to do that he's still unmarried, unfortunately.
Okay.
It's not a successful marriage, but
I was going to ask you to share with me how he's doing on two fronts. One, from work, and two, on relationships.
relationship not too great. Work is fine.
Okay.
It's just relationship.
How old is he?
40 or 5.
Okay. And that's usually what happens. When the child grows up discouraged, they will be performers in their place of work because success was measured by performance. But they struggle in relationships because they could not connect at the very basic level with their own parents. And they grow up very, very angry. Fathers, do not provoke the children to anger. Do not aggravate them, or they'll become discouraged. Let me move on to describe the other parenting styles, and then we'll engage with it. I think the statement here on the screen is what I've just talked about, that many people who are raised like this may be successful in career, but they always struggle with their relationships. And sometimes they can't even connect that their struggle has anything to do with their upbringing. Friends, when all is said and done, success is not measured in monetary terms. It is measured in relationships. That's how you make a success. God, when he was asked the question, what's the most important commandment, responded by saying, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and your neighbor as yourself. He ends up giving 3 relationships: you with yourself, you with God, you with others. And if a person is not at peace with themselves, they can't even love God. You're supposed to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. When a person is not at peace with himself, they struggle to love other people. By contrast, when a man's ways are pleasing to the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Friends, is this how you're raising your children? Just remember, if you aggravate them to anger, they will be discouraged. Let's move on to the negligent parent. Now, remember, All these parents love their children. All of them do. And I'm going to describe what I'm calling a negligent parent. And some of you may not like me for describing this, but after you've gone through your emotions, reflect on the facts and find out, tell me whether or not I'm describing a reality of someone that you know. No parent wants to neglect their children, but there are many reasons for neglect. High divorce. And I'm not here to debate the reasons for the divorce, but only to state that when it happens, children fall between the cracks. Secondly, an increase in the number of both parents being away from the home. Now, away from the home, whether they are both away preaching the gospel or they're both away working in a bank, if they are away, they are away. Friends, God has given us our children to raise. We do not delegate our child raising back to God. He has already delegated that to us. And no matter what language you use, well, I left them with the Lord. No. The Lord left them with you to raise. You don't go away and leave them with the Lord. You stay there and raise them. Friends, you don't have to have children. But if you do have them, you have to raise them. Remember, they were made in the image of God. And you asked the Lord to give you a child. And the Lord gave that child to you. Behold, children are a gift from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. This is not a gift that we receive because we deserve it. Even pagans get children because of God's grace. And God has given you that child and has expectations from you. If you don't believe me, do you remember little boy Samuel in 1 Samuel chapter 2 and chapter 3? You remember that boy? You remember when he went to Eli and said, did you call me? Because he heard his name. And Eli told him, no, go back to bed. I did not call you. When this happened 3 times, Eli suddenly realized the Lord may be speaking to this boy. And Eli, with all his faulty parenting, did this one thing right. He coached Samuel on how to listen to the voice of God and how to respond to the Lord. So when the Lord called him the next time, he said, here I am, Lord, your servant is listening, please speak. And the Lord spoke to him. Does anybody remember what the Lord said to Eli? Sorry, what the Lord said to little boy Samuel. Does anybody remember? Please summarize it for us. The story is found in 1 Samuel chapter 3. Give us a brief summary of what you remember the Lord saying to Samuel. He said to him, I'm about to do something in Israel at which the ears of those who hear will tingle. And then he told Samuel what he would do to the household of Eli because of the things that Eli knew about. His children made themselves contemptible, and Eli failed to restrain them. Now, when we read our scriptures, the Old Testament, we meet Eli's children as adults, but they were not born adults. They were born young children growing up. Now, who is Samuel's father? Anybody remember his father?
Elkanah.
Elkanah.
Yes, that's right, that's Elkanah. But who is his father figure?
Eli.
Eli. Now, if you have your Bible with you, and I want to make this interactive, but I have to be careful not to exceed my time. If you look at 1 Samuel chapter 7, And I just share it from memory because we don't have the time to read every part of it. 1 Samuel 7 from verse 15, it describes the ministry of Samuel, how he used to go on annual circuit from Bethel to Gilgal to Mizpah, and he always came back to his home in Ramah. And there too, in Ramah, he ministered to the Lord. He had a busy travel ministry, annual circuit. Fast forward to chapter 8. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his children to take his office, but his children did not walk with the Lord. So what happened? Israel rebelled against them. Here is a godly man who was unable to pass on the baton of godliness to his children. He had received a faulty baton from his father figure. His children became just like the children of Eli. Somebody could kindly mute your end so you don't get the background noise. Let me say to us, when both parents are busy away from home, the children will fall between the cracks. And it doesn't matter what you're busy doing. If you're busy stealing from banks or busy sharing the gospel, if you are gone, you're gone. If I was sharing this in a Kenya setting, and in Africa, many of us listening to me are from Africa, we have labor is so affordable in Africa that we have house help helping us with the home. And so both of us are gone and house help is there to help us. Now, it's not a bad idea to have house help, but most people I've spoken to, the house help in their home, that's not their job of choice. They are house help because certain things did not go right in their lives. Perhaps early pregnancy, perhaps the death of parents, and so they had to drop out of school to try and provide for their siblings. Perhaps they're very, very bright, they have the grades, but they have no money to continue school. There are many reasons why people end up as house help. The common factor is this job in your home is not the job of their choice. They came there already frustrated. In a typical Africa setting, the house help is not paid a high wage, so her income is a frustration. In a typical Africa setting, the house help gets up before you get up to fix your breakfast and goes to bed long after you've gone to bed because they need to make sure the last dishes are washed. In many homes, that house help is working from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., 18 hours of work. And I could go on and list other reasons why she's frustrated. She's frustrated on 5 different counts. Now that's the young lady who's taking care of you, of your child, while you're both gone. And you come back in the evening and the house is clean and the clothes are washed and the food is cooked and your child has had a nap and they're looking forward to receiving you. Oh, yes, they're tired and you are also tired. But tell me, who is spending time with this child? Who is shaping this child? Let me just show you some figures here. Assuming you have a 2-year-old who wakes up at 7 and goes to bed at 9 p.m. and has a 2-hour nap, this child is awake for 12 hours and spends 12 hours at the house help. Or maybe spends about 10 hours at the house help during that time. But you come home in the evening and you give your child the worst hours of your day. You're tired, the child is tired, that's what the child gets. Now be very sincere, in a home like that, who is influencing that child? You may be the one providing for the child, but who is influencing the child? It's going to be hard to admit it, but this child is being influenced by the house help, the angry house help. In the meantime, the child is growing. They become teenagers. They start behaving in a very different way. And you're thinking, what came over my son? This is not like my son. Now listen carefully. Whatever came over him while you are gone. You see, friends, you can choose who to marry. You can choose when to marry. You can choose when to have children. You can even choose how many. But once you have those children, you cannot choose when to raise them. If you don't raise them, they will still grow, but you may not like what you get. In Luke 2:52, the scripture describes the Lord as growing in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. Friends, to grow in stature, all it takes is food and time. That's all it takes. But to grow in wisdom and favor with God and man takes the presence and participation of a godly parent. That means you. Let me ask you a question. If you had a special needs child, would you change your schedule to accommodate that child? Every parent I've ever asked this question says, of course we'll change your schedule. Here's my question for you. Why must you wait to have a special needs child to change your schedule? Why must you wait? The capacity to change is there. In the meantime, the child is growing. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not assuming that you are negligent parents. No. But I have to speak that way for it to catch our attention, because within your circle of friends, there may be one such parent. Or perhaps, just perhaps, that's why the Lord had you join us in this seminar. Now, you love your children, that's unquestionable, but you're not there. You're not there. Somebody else is raising them. You see, children want to be like adults, and they will emulate whichever adult spends time with them. So if you are not there to raise those children, somebody else is raising them. They are misparenting them. In the meantime, the child is growing. In a negligent parent home, parents are busy everywhere except in the home. Mom comes back from work. Little Jimmy runs to mom. Mom, can you help with my homework? No, I'm expected elsewhere. Wait for your daddy. Your daddy's coming in, just that he'll help you. Dad comes in, oh, Dad, can you help me? No. You see, we've just opened after 7 months of closure from COVID. It's a very, very busy time at work. The child is being tossed between mom and dad. And guess who ends up helping this child in an African setting? The frustrated house help. Now, many of you are from Africa, but are not in an African setting right now. But perhaps you know somebody who was raised like that, and now you are gone all the time. Or your child is not spending time with house help. There's a different child care facility because you're too busy to raise them. You see, the neglect teaches the child that he's not worth spending time with. This child becomes insecure because the parents are never present or predictable. Those, when they do come back, they are busy and tend to speak harshly because they've had a rough day. So the harshness and the neglect tends to wound the child's spirit, resulting in rebellion. The child has no self-respect because he's not respected and has not learned to control himself because the parents are not there to pass on these values. Negligent parents who are gone all the time make promises, but they cannot keep those promises. Broken promises will wound a child's spirit and lower his self-worth. This child tends to do poorly in school because he has little motivation. Do you have a neighbor like that? Is that neighbor in this meeting? As you reflect on this style, you realize if you are raised like this, you're thinking, man, I was never raised. I just grew up. Am I speaking to someone? Would you like to share? We have a spot for 2 people. Don't be angry at me if I describe your situation. Perhaps God wants you to make changes. Think about your growing up years and now think about your present lifestyle. If the Lord was to meet with you this evening and ask you to talk to him about your children, would he be pleased with the input you're giving them? Or will you be another Eli case? Talk to me, somebody. You're awfully quiet. Did I upset you?
No, you didn't. We are just thinking and absorbing.
Mm-hmm. Do you know somebody was raised like that? I'm not afraid of silence. I'm going to wait a bit longer. Lynn,
I think I'll break the silence. Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
My name is Bola. I can relate to this very easily. I grew up in a home where my siblings were older at the time. I mean, they're still older, of course. And my parents were very driven, both of them. My dad would often leave where we lived in Lagos, Nigeria, and he would be everywhere all the time. He was always posted. He was working with the government. And I remember, it was very lonely growing up. My older siblings were in boarding school and all of that. And many times, looking back, I think I for sure grew up, but I think my grandmother helped at some point. But I think I also grew up just reading books. And I'll spend time with neighbors. And I so admired some of those families. And even from when I was young, I knew I wouldn't live my life that way. My parents were not Christians. I grew up in a Christian home. What you call a Christian home, but we're for sure not Christians. And I remember, even just from my grandmother's influence, I would always say I'll marry a Christian and my life will for sure not be like this. And my mom left for the UK when I was 16. My dad remarried. It was really bad. But for me, I was so intentional. My husband and I were so intentional about not allowing the same cycle to continue because my mom was also neglected as a kid. Her mom left and remarried. And I said, this won't happen. And I remember that by the time my daughter got into, in Nigeria, we'll call it GSS1. I said, in fact, it wasn't an option. I said, she's not going to go to boarding school. We're going to raise our kids. At a point, we didn't have living helps because we said, even if I get home late from work, I want to see my kids and be the one that they see before they sleep. And coming to Canada has made it a lot better. We're so intentional because for both of us, all the issues we saw, all the dysfunction we saw, we're like, this will not happen again. And I'd like to think that we've been able to rewrite a lot of the story. I'd like to think that the values of the Christian faith we've passed on to them, they will also pass on to their children. And at times, even with the kids, when I was listening to this in the kitchen, my daughter heard a bit of it. I'm like, I hope we're not too hard. I hope we're not dominant parents because we're so passionate about rewriting the story of our family. We need to change the story. Unfortunately, when you talked about dominant parents, I remember my dad, and I hope I'm not taking too much time, but I remember my dad was very tough on the boys and not so tough on the girls. And I can see the way that has changed all of us. We're very different because we're raised kind of differently. And the age gap is quite a bit. So for me, I feel that we recognized it very early and we decided to rewrite our story. And you can't pat yourself on the back until you see the result. But I'm trusting God that what we'll see in the future will be very good. But yes, it was tough. I can totally relate to this. It was tough for me to forgive my mom. That's the truth. But my sister and I, we had so many conversations, especially about the time she passed. And we said she was raised this way. She didn't know any better. And even years before she died, she'll tell my husband, I love the way you're raising your kids. I didn't do such a good job because I didn't know what to do. So, I mean, it's in the past. I've forgiven her. And for us, we're just trying to rewrite our own story and do a good job, which is why we're part of this forum and why we lean on other people for support.
Lanle, thank you so much for sharing. We have time for one more. Raised by parents who loved you, but they just weren't there to love you. They were gone all the time. A lot of good things were purchased, but really, you'd rather have fewer things and more of your parents. Anybody else raised by parents who are not there? Or perhaps one of you is thinking, that describes me right now. Ouch. Femi? Okay, let me go ahead and describe the other third style of parenting, and perhaps you'll relate to this a little bit more. We're going to call this particular one the permissive parent. Permissive parent. Let's see if we can see this one. The permissive parent is also called the indulgent parent. They're very nice people, very warm, very supportive. They give you great hugs. They're big on emotional support. But they don't expect very much from their children. They expect very little. These parents, though they are present and warm, they tend to be weak on establishing and enforcing rules and on setting limits for their children. Why are they like this? There are several reasons. These parents threaten with their children. They threaten them. They're the kind of parents that the parent has to speak 4 or 5 times before the child responds. The child just ignores you. They threaten, I'll punish you, I'll discipline you, but they don't do any of it. You know why? Because they fear that they may damage their children if they should be strict with them. Some of these parents came from dominant parent homes. They saw how their siblings suffered and how they themselves suffered, and they decided, I will not raise my children like that. I will always praise my children. I will not be as strict as my father. But in the process, they throw out the baby with the bathwater. They give their child anything he wants. Or let's take a picture of a permissive dad. Mom is at home and she's fixing a meal, and it's 10 minutes to 7. Dad walks in. Dinner is at 7 o'clock, and little Jessica is crying. And Dad asks, why are you crying? Because Mommy will not give me ice cream. And Dad turns to his wife, why won't you give him ice cream? He says, hey, dinner is in 10 minutes. He can have ice cream after dinner. He can't have ice cream before dinner. The child begins to cry. Permissive dad says, give it to him. You know, I grew up without eating ice cream. The first time I ate ice cream was in college. This child wants ice cream, we have it in the fridge, give it to him. Permissive dad, the child looks at dad and smiles. The wife is frustrated. She gives in. The child eats ice cream, is unable to eat their meal. The whole evening is messed up. Permissive dad, raised in a home of dominant dad and choosing to be the exact opposite of how he was raised. But sometimes permissive parents are permissive because they are married to spouses who are very dominant. So they're trying to balance out for the sake of the children. And when the kids are growing up, they love permissive parents. But when they become adults, they realize, oh my goodness, my mother did not set any limits for me. I got whatever I wanted. All I had to do was to cry for it. This child grows up and realizes they're in the driver's seat. They are the ones who are leading that family. They can play parent anytime they want. They can manipulate that child. You see, this child becomes insecure because they're trying to lean on the parent, but the parent has no stand. In Swahili, barbecue, when you do a barbecue, you call it nyama choma. And you know, when you've done a nice barbecue and you've got a toothache, you can't quite enjoy it. And mom, permissive mom or permissive dad cannot be relied upon during that time. The child learns to manipulate rules because the standards are not firm. Now, friends, look at this bridge. I took this picture off the internet. Look at that bridge. Is this bridge safe to walk on? Sure, yeah. It's got barricades on it. It's safe. But I want you to visualize this bridge as one that you can drive on. Will the drivers feel safe or unsafe when the barricades are in place? You see, the barricade prevents you from falling in the water. If you drive on it and you slide too much to the left, the barricade will hold you in. Oh yes, your car will be scratched, but it's nothing compared to falling in the water. Permissive parent homes have no barricade on their bridges, so to speak. Now, when the barricade is there, you can enjoy the entire bridge. 10 of you can walk side by side and you enjoy that bridge. But when there's no barricade, you can't walk 10 side by side because you're afraid to be close to the edge. Now listen carefully. The removal of the barricade does not increase your freedom. It actually limits your freedom. Did you hear that? The presence of the barricade defines the path for you and increases your freedom. The removal of it removes the definition and reduces your freedom because you're afraid to walk close to the side, close to the edge. So you only use the middle part. You don't have the freedom. You don't feel the freedom to use the entire path. Permissive parent homes are like that. The child grows up in the end being insecure. The child grows up and easily succumbs to addictive behavior because when they were young, they were not taught self-control. What impact has your upbringing had on you? And what type of person have you become? Were you raised by a dominant dad, dominant mom? And there are times when parents are both dominant and negligent. In other words, when they are there, they are dominant. But for the most part, they are not there. So they're both dominant and negligent. And that child falls between the cracks. How are you doing? Do you know anybody raised like this? Remember, child raising is not so much what you do, it's who you are. Children are looking for an adult to follow. There's a lot of information available today, but they're looking for someone to follow. Is that someone you? Did they find you a present and available parent to follow? And when they follow you, will they learn something will turn them towards godliness? In this generation, there's a big struggle in godliness. Living in countries where godliness is despised, will you stand up and raise your children to be godly, even if they'll be laughed at by others? When the Son of Man returns, will he find faith on the earth? Will those faithful ones be raised in your home? Talk to me, somebody. Am I describing a situation you're aware of?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukolwe, for how far you have enunciated your concepts and your ideas in this meeting. I know beyond a measure of doubt that people are getting blessed and emotional healing is taking place as this meeting is going on, because that is what we prayed for. We pray before all our meetings. We pray 1 week ahead of our meetings, and we trust God that what we believe for in this meeting is already happening. Now, I know that you have a lot to share with us, but you do not have a lot of time, because I know in another 30 minutes, you'll be rounding up your segment of the teaching. But I just have a question I want you to help me quickly address, and it has to do with the template you have described in the home. Now, what happens when you have a permissive father and a domineering mother, in a situation in which the father in the home outsources discipline to the woman? How does it impact on the upbringing and the environment and the atmosphere in a family setting such as that?
Extremely negatively. You see, God calls himself our Father, and we earthly fathers get to borrow that title. When your father is permissive, your child grows up thinking God is permissive. And so when God asks him to do something, he takes it as a suggestion. He never even takes God seriously. Now, of course, God can always intervene through somebody else, but that child will have an uphill task in relating to the Lord. When the child is raised by a dominant or domineering mother, this person, when they grow up and marry, may leave child raising to their wife, because they never really saw their father play a role, any significant role in child raising. It's the mother who did it. And when the child cried, the father, as you said, outsourced to the mother. The mother did everything. The mother in that particular case is a very angry mother. This child grows up liking the father, but when they become grown up, they prefer the mother. Because when they think back on their growing up years, they can hardly find anything they learned from their father. But they will always push their father to the edge.
Thank you. So can you help us encourage men on this platform listening to this broadcast this afternoon that one way or the other may be permissive in their parenting approach, just outsourcing presence, what I call presence. They are being present in the life of their child, in the life of their children, literatures out there call them absent fathers. They may actually be present at home, but yet they are absent.
They're disengaged emotionally.
Exactly. Please just speak a word into the life of men like that for a change in the name of the Lord.
Men, God has given you the opportunity to use his name as your title. And your presence in a child's life will shape his destiny. God himself shows that to us. When Christ was being baptized, the Father spoke from heaven. We don't have too many instances where God speaks out loud. This is my beloved Son. In him I'm well pleased. He bragged on his Son in public. At the transfiguration, in private, with only 3 disciples there, the Lord bragged on his Son. This is my Son. Listen to him. The Son says, I can do nothing except what I've seen my Father doing. It's not that Christ was incapable of doing it, but he chose to do what the Father chose for him to do. In Mark chapter 1, in that story where the Lord went to Simon Peter's house, and Simon's mother-in-law was unwell. And the Lord healed her, and she waited on them. Remember that story? What happened? The entire city came in, and the Lord healed those people. But early in the morning, while it was still dark, he went off and found a quiet place, and there he prayed. Mark 1:35. Early in the morning, when the people woke up, they began to look for him. His disciples began to look for him. And when they found him, they said, Lord, everybody's looking for you. Does anybody remember what the Lord said to them? He says, let's go to another place, for there also I must minister. The Lord was not trying to please people. He was not under any pressure from anyone. He was going about his Father's business. He left those people who were crowding to see him to go to another place because he was in his Father's agenda. Here's my question for you, man. What memory are you leaving with the children? What baton are you passing to them? My brother, I may have to come back another day because I would like to be able to focus a little bit on Psalm 78, where the baton is being passed on from generation to generation. And fathers are responsible for that. Yes, mothers play a wonderful role. I'm not negating that, but Brother Lusoji asked me to speak to fathers. And when fathers drop that baton, the neglect passes on from generation to generation. The anger passes on from generation to generation. The ungodliness passes on from generation to generation. Now, Brother Lusoji, you need to advise me.
Yes.
We have 24 minutes to close of the 2 hours.
Yes.
I promise to speak for only 90 minutes.
Yes.
I've engaged my audience. I need 7 minutes to complete my presentation. Do I have 7 minutes?
Yes. In fact, on the chat, there are 2 of our members are already employing that you should come back another day so that we have you.
Okay.
But
definitely
we'll give you 10 minutes to do a roundup.
Wonderful. Let me take those 10 minutes. I'll speak 9 out of the 10, and I'll engage you for the last minute or so.
Because definitely there's going to be questions. People will have questions that they will want you to address before we close the meeting in another 20 minutes or thereabout.
Wonderful. I'm going to describe to us now what we should all be aiming for. The loving but firm parent, also called the authoritative parent, as opposed to the authoritarian parent. Here are some synonyms for the word authoritative. They are confident, they are convincing, they are respected, they are influential. Most parents think this is who they are. But remember, we judge ourselves by our intentions. Others judge us by our actions. So one of the things that would be very helpful for you to do after this seminar is to ask your wife or ask your husband or ask your children,
looking at me,
how do you experience me? And describe what I shared about the dominant parent. Is this how you experience me? And when you ask that question, be ready for the answer and don't fight back. Because you don't experience yourself, others experience you. And if they begin to mention things that you say, I don't agree with that, you don't have to agree. If they are describing how they're experiencing you, take a step back and ask yourself, oh my goodness, if this is how my children experience me, I ought to make some changes. So the loving but firm parent usually have very clearly defined rules, and they have clear limits. They have high standards, and that, my friend, is a good thing. But here's the difference between this parent and the dominant. They take time to train their children to understand those standards. And when they take time to train them, they are not shouting at those children. Do you know parents who shout at children? Why do they shout at them? If the kids were deaf, would shouting help? They are deaf, they won't hear anyway. So why do you shout at them? I don't mean you, I mean your neighbor, because I'm sure you don't shout at them. Oh, but perhaps you do. These parents give very clear warnings as to what will happen when the children break those rules and they go ahead and give the necessary discipline. They give support by expressing affection, by giving physical touch. Physical touch may be a hug, maybe a high five. They listen to the child till the child feels understood. When the child needs discipline, they give the discipline. These parents are a healthy combination of dominant and permissive. They are firm, but they are loving, and they are kind, and they are present. Many parents have delegated tasks and relationships. You cannot delegate your relationships. You must be present physically. So let's go back to that example where the young man, 12-year-old, came with 84%. Daddy, I got 84%. In the first description of the dominant parent home, they have asked all sorts of questions. You almost failed the exam. Where's the other 16%? Who had the highest? I'm not raising fools, was the response we talked about last time. But in this home, first response, well done. That's the first word that child hears from the dad's mouth. And that well done is followed by a physical touch, a hug or a high five. And then dad says, and I'm saying dad, it could be mom, let me have a look at your paper. And as they look through that paper, they discover there were 25 questions and their son failed 4. And this is how they put it. Son, you only missed 4 out of 25. And the son is smiling, yeah, dad. And then the father discovers everything the son missed had to do with multiplication. Hey, son, you missed multiplication, every single question. What happened? Dad, do you remember? And the child can describe what was going on during that time. That's the time we were learning multiplication on the internet, and we had trouble with our Zoom connections. I didn't really get the concepts. Or that's the time we had gone to such and such a place for a holiday, and I came back with a flu, and I was at home when the teacher was teaching. The child can connect with what the father is saying, and the father can connect with the child's struggles. So guess what happens in that home after dinner? It's not going to bed as usual. Dad or mom are going to get involved and help this child with the multiplication tables. You see, this child may never score 100 like the other one we talked about. This child may score 92. They may never be the top of their class, but they are content and they have a stable home. This child may not be an A student. They may be a B+ student, but they go on to do their PhD. There's a stability of character that a loving but firm parent brings to the child, and especially if the loving but firm parent is the father. They're available, they are loving, but they know the rules and they work through those rules. You see, the warm support and the clearly defined rules teach the child how to build self-respect. The child is more content when he has learned to control himself because he's seen the father. The father does get angry, but he controls himself. He doesn't shout. The child knows what self-control is all about. The child realizes that they are more secure. They realize the rules in the home are there to guide the home. This child knows that the kids who say rules are there to be broken. No. This child knows that that's not the case. They know that rules are there to give guidance. They know that when your traffic light is red, it's green for somebody else, so they will not run that red light. But they know they'll meet the guy whom it's green. They understand how life functions because the parents are there to guide them, especially the father. This child grows up and ranks highest in self-respect. They have a capacity to conform to authorities at school, at church, with government. This child has a greater interest in their parents' faith because they have seen this faith practiced in the home. This child is less likely to join a rebellious group. Now, friends, You may have clergy, ministers of the gospel, who are dominant parents, and their children have no interest in your faith. But you may be one of those with a strong faith, no position in your church, but you're raising a godly generation. There are three things I want to leave you with. Our homes do need clearly defined rules. They need to know consequences to breaking the rules. But there is more to parenting than rules. There needs to be a commitment to love each child in a warm, affectionate, and supportive way. But friends, there is no substitute for your personal presence. You need to be there. You need to set the pace. In raising children, you need to lead them. You need to develop them. You need to care for them. And there is no substitute for your presence. You remember, we reproduce after our own kind. So take a good look at yourself. If your child turned out just like you, would you be proud of it? Or would you be ashamed? If I had time, I'd play this song by Casting Crowns. It's called A Slow Fade. I'll just read some lyrics to you. It says, be careful, little eyes, what you see. It's the second glance that ties your hands as darkness pulls the strings. Be careful, little feet, where you go, for it's the little feet behind you that are sure to follow. It's a slow fade when you give yourself away. It's a slow fade when black and white has turned to gray, and doubts invade and choices are made. A price will be paid when you give yourself away. People never crumble in a day. It's a slow fade. Be careful, little ears, what you hear, for flattery leads to compromise. The end is always near. Be careful, little lips, what you say, for empty words and promises lead broken hearts astray. It's a slow fade. It's a slow fade when you give yourself away. It's a slow fade when black and white are turned to gray, and thoughts fade and choices are made. A price will be paid when you give yourself away. People never crumble in a day. The journey from your mind to your hands is shorter than you're thinking. Be careful if you think you stand, you just might be sinking. It's a slow fade when you give yourself away. It's a slow fade when black and white are turned to gray. Doubts invade. Choices are made. A price will be paid when you give yourself away. People never crumble in a day. Daddies never crumble in a day. Families never crumble in a day. Or be careful, little eyes, what you see. Be careful, little ears, what you hear. For the Father above is looking down in love. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. I trust the Lord will use these frantic words that I've tried to share, describing scenarios in the home. I've not dug deep into the word, but I've given you glimpses of it from different places. The next time we have together, I will place my message around Psalm 78 and extrapolate from it and help you to think through what is really going on in your home. The Lord is depending on you to raise the next generation. The church can help, but it was never the church's role to do it. It was always the parental role. Are you raising a godly family, or have you delegated that to somebody else? Back to you, Brother Olusoji.
Thank you so much, Doctor. This has been a very profound and mind-expanding expose that you have given us this evening. We already have people clamoring for a second part. So we're definitely going to have a part 2 to this. And It's really been very, very insightful. I want to use this opportunity to just call on anyone that has a question, a comment that you would like to pose to Doctor this evening before we close up this meeting. Any questions?
Hi, this is Christy.
Okay.
Yes, first I was going to say that Doctor's voice is very gentle, at the same time very piercing. Thank you so much, sir. And I was just analyzing with my husband that, we're all not there yet, because again, we're products of where we are, our upbringing and what we know. But I think what he's giving us is a barometer to check our lives with as we get towards being better parents, and also to help us acknowledge where we had failed, especially unknowingly. Right. So I just want to thank, I think it's one of the best sessions I've had on parenting. I just want to say thank you so much, sir.
The Lord bless you.
Thank you so much, Christiana. In the chat group, Doctor has put a website for us. So, everyone can just, pick that. There'll be resources, that can help buttress some of the things he has shared with us. The website is raisingfutureparents.com. So I want to encourage each and every one of us, after this meeting to, go and onto the website and pick out, the resources that can be useful for us. So if we have any other questions or comments as we're, trying to bring the meeting to a close. Yes, Kemi.
Thank you very much, sir. I wanted to ask a question about, parenting when it comes to having different children. Like, our children are not the same. And so one size doesn't fit all, so how do you balance that? How do you take from that fourth person that you describe and balance that?
Different personalities, yes, but none of them is exempted from obeying God. No personality is exempted from obeying God. So what I would say is that, first of all, remember what I said earlier on, children are looking for an adult to follow. So you walk with God, you follow God. Some children will require more work than others in a specific area. Don't give up. So the one size fits all is that they all need to be obedient to God. The variations will come up with the areas of struggle that depend on personality. But you can train yourself to be godly. That's a scriptural command in 1 Peter, train yourself to be godly. And you can raise a godly generation. That also is a scriptural command. Now, if you have 4 children who are godly in your family, they will not be identical. They will be godly in different ways with their different personalities. So what you're looking out for ultimately is obedience to God. But the children are going to see that obedience to God through your walk with God. Now, notice I did not say your service in the church. I said your walk with God. Because your walk with God has to do with your dealing with sin and overcoming it. It has to do with how you relate, how you prioritize that relationship. It has to do with the children seeing Christ at the center of your life. Not what you talk about it, but what they see you doing. And with their different personalities, they will connect with the Lord and be able to walk with Him. Now, many parents come to parenting wounded with their past, and therefore they are unable to help their children because of their own wounding. Let me urge you as parents, seek help for your wounding. The help is available. When you read Isaiah 61, the very same thing the Lord came to do, to bind the brokenhearted. Perhaps you are the brokenhearted he's talking about. If the Lord doesn't bind your broken heart, you will end up breaking many other hearts. So parents need help. It is not enough to have children and raise them. You need the divine help from the Lord to be able to sort you out, so to speak, so you can raise them in the ways that honor Him. Maybe I've spoken too much. Back to you, my brother.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Kemi, hopefully that has helped you. Okay. All right. Thanks. So I don't see any other questions. in the chat room for now. So I trust that each and every one of us has been impacted by what has been shared, listening to the different kinds of parenting styles and trying to see what exact one that we were raised in. I mean, in listening, I just kept telling myself, I kind of feel that I was raised in kind of a mix, the different styles. So, and I also feel that at some time, maybe my parent was oscillating between one kind of parenting style and another parenting style, maybe because by virtue of age. So I feel that the older ones in the house were raised differently from the younger ones because I come from a large family. So maybe by the time they were raising the younger ones, they had grown old and they were getting tired. So it kind of impacted on, how each individual has turned out. And of course, much can be said to the impact of, accepting Christ in the lives of some of my siblings as opposed to the ones that are yet to accept Christ into their lives. So it's been a very engaging, I wrote down a number of points. I asterisks them, kind of like pondering points, so to speak, that I would be thinking about, and hopefully be more participatory in the next session that we'll have. So we're very grateful for. We're very grateful to you, Doc, for all that you have said. Does anybody still have a question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Good evening. My namesake is also a doctor. Actually, my name is Stanley Mukolwe. I was invited here by Linda. Linda happened to be my schoolmate, and also we have Abu also here too on the line. So they invited me, so I joined. Probably I came late, but thank you, doctor, for the presentation so far. Yeah, I just have this to say. Shortly before I left home back to work, I visited a cousin of mine, and I met a dilemma right there in the house, and which I feel I need to share, and I would like Dr. Stanley also to advise me on what to tell my cousin of mine. Okay. Now, when I got to the house, I saw my cousin of mine trying to question his 12-year-old boy. Within this lockdown period, they were doing all their classes and their assignments via the internet. All right. You see, as we are working tirelessly to train this kid, the devil is also strategizing, all right, trying to steal them away from us. While they go on the internet, which is a wide world, the evil men and the evil people pop out some kind of very juicy and attractive website for the kids. And whenever they just click on that website, it takes them to, to very interesting areas like games, like beautiful pictures of Batman. Before you know it, the next thing you will see is nude pictures of boys and girls. And now, this young boy, 12 years old, downloaded up to 75 images of nude pictures of male and female. And he saved it on his laptop. Okay, unknown to the parent. And it was when he now wanted to transfer a video, a film to one of his schoolmates via USB cord, okay, to a saving device. That was when the boy downloaded it into his own laptop and saw the film quite okay, and saw all other nude pictures. And that was how the whole system, the whole secret was leaked. Wow. That the mom and the dad went mad. But I really respect my brother. He kept a very calm disposition and a very calm spirit, and he was trying to find out from what happened and where did we go wrong. So now, just as I've said, as we are trying effortlessly and trying to raise these kids in a godly way, the evil people are also there in the internet. And if you don't monitor the kids, what the environment, the website they go into,
yes, okay.
And the website name will be so attractive, like a game.com, like something very attractive that you will never predict what is behind it. They are wolves. So
let me take it
what
one step
advice
further.
do you have in that? Yes, so I can
Let me
advise
take it
my
one step further.
cousin. Thank you so much. Yes.
What they've gone one step further. Because of the artificial intelligence, they know the image behind the screen. So when that child is watching those games by themselves, they advertise certain content to that child. But if the father is sitting there with the child, they will not advertise it. So you can play with this child for 2 hours and no such images appear. But when they're on their own, they know. Now, let me mention 2 things. A naked female body is fascinating to a man or to a young boy. That's reality. Let's not escape it. Men, do you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the nudity of a female is attractive to a man. And they will use that nudity to sell any agenda they want. Now, it's not because men are defective. That is how we're put together. But we need to have self-control. Now, 2 Corinthians 10, verse 3. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. Now, the average believer doesn't even know there's a war going on. And the spoils of the war are the hearts and the minds of our children. In France, just this past week, they approved a bill that defined the age of sexual consent to be 15. Now, some of you may be alarmed by that. Before that, there was no age limit. There was no age limit. In France, there wasn't one. Now they've tried to put an age limit and they've put it at 15. The age of incest. If you're found in a relationship of incest, if you're both above 18, your daughter's above 18, the father's sleeping with her, in that particular country, it is not taboo. There's war going on. And men and women may hide their faces from it. And governments may be on the side that is fighting Christianity. You're going to have to fight it for your own children and for yourself and for the Lord. Nobody's watching out for you. They're trying to steal it away from you. So there's a war going on. And I only read verse 3, but it goes on. And brother, our time is up. Our time is up. But let me encourage you to go on up to verse 5, because it tells you how we fight that battle, how we demolish that kind of thinking. And perhaps at our next visit, we can linger on that as well. But just to let you know, there's a war going on. And the spoils of the war are the hearts and minds of our children. So you need to be double alert. Nobody is watching out for your child.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Stanley. This has been a very, very incisive, thought-provoking, eye-opening, anointed, spiritual and delivering session we've had today. Before we call it a close, I just want to emphasize 1 or 2 things very quickly before I hand over to my wife and she rounds up the meeting. In the chat, Dr. Stanley has typed his email, sorry, what do you call it? His website, from which you can access some resources. And apart from that, there is a program on that website that is costing $20. That is a self-paced class that you can access for 30 days. $20 is, I believe, some of us in this part of the world is just about the amount of money you use to treat yourself to a small lunch somewhere. The Bible says that you should buy knowledge and sell it not. So I want to encourage as many of us on this broadcast to please sign up for that self-paced class on Dr. Stanley's website, by the grace of God. Now, I don't know if anybody still have any question, because we've already overshot our meeting time, especially for those who are on this meeting for the first time. Our meetings usually don't last for more than 2 hours. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question, please?
Oh, yes, please go ahead. Why not?
Hi. So sorry. I just thought it'd be nice to just have an idea of, for example, parents find themselves that, okay, we are in the negligent part, or you're in the permissive, or a mixture of one, or dominant, or whatever. I mean, I'm sure there are many solutions, but what would Dr. Stanley advise would be the best way to at least begin to meander things and make corrections and try to move things forward, even though maybe the kids are even a bit older, but you just want to make some attempt to right the wrong, if I may use that word?
I think first is to admit that you have a baggage from your growing up years. That's usually the hardest thing. When I say baggage, I mean the emotional history. You're carrying emotional history. You're carrying a history that makes you react to life instead of act in life. And once you realize you've got that challenge, then you need to seek help for yourself. When Christian marriages fail, it's usually because one or both parents are not working with God. And in many cases, because of our baggage, we have an area of life where we are not working with God. We try to protect it because we don't even want God to touch it, because we have learned to fend for ourselves. It has to do with the baggage, the hurts, the abuse, the anger that we've picked up from our growing up years. So the solution will not be a quick solution. You need help. After you recognize this is where I am, and if I do nothing about it, this is what I will pass on, then you need help. When the help begins, the healing, the inner healing process, which is not available from psychologists, but is help available from ministers of the gospel who have learned the process. Once that healing happens, then you are able to disconnect yourself from the hurts of the past, to realize what ungodly beliefs you have picked up along the way as a result of that hurt. And you begin to change your belief system. The transformation that the scripture talks about in Romans 12:1 and 2. When that transformation begins, you begin to experience the reality of being born again. Many people are born into God's kingdom, but they never grew. And you begin to grow in the Lord, and your life begins to turn around, and your children become beneficiaries of it. So this is no longer a child-raising issue. It's a parental issue that needs to be corrected, and the child will benefit from a parent who's becoming godly. Again, I'm giving you a part answer for a long solution.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stanley. Definitely the way this meeting has flowed today, we are going to have a part 2 in the coming months by the grace of God. So many things has been shared in this meeting. And for me, personally, I think probably one of the most profound things that you said that I wrote down, and I want to end with this before my wife rounds up, is the fact that you said that you can choose who to marry, you can choose when to marry, you can choose when to have children, but you can't choose when to train the child. I think it's a very, very profound statement. Why? Because the training of a child before the world view of that child is formed is just within a time spectrum. It's just a window of opportunity. And once that opportunity is lost, and as parents, we didn't make use of that window of opportunity to train that child appropriately, I think for a lot of us, we may have lost that child, except for the grace of God and for divine intervention. So we want to thank you so very, very much. I know it's very late in Nairobi, Kenya now. Probably it's about 11 p.m. in the night, and you are preaching at 7 a.m. tomorrow, like you said, like you chatted with me the other time we spoke. So we thank you very much, Dr. Stanley. God bless you. God increase you, increase his grace upon your life, and increase your anointing. Now, very quickly, our meeting in the month of April is going to be on the 17th, by God's grace. We have scheduled another very resourceful, impactful, inspiring, and anointed speaker. Some of us are already familiar with him because, as is our custom, like I did with Dr. Stanley's books, I was able to order some of the books of our speaker for next month when my wife traveled to Nigeria about two years ago, and we gave out some of his books to members who are residents in Canada, where we still had live meetings. So I just want to whet your appetite and give a sense of expectation for our meeting in April that is slated for the 17th. So please mark your calendars, save the dates, just that 2 hours between 2 p.m. EST and 4 p.m. EST by the grace of God. And we're going to have another powerful presentation in the month of April, the Lord keeping us all in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Once again, Dr. Stanley, we want to thank you for your time. We appreciate you, and we know that it's running late at your end, so we're just going to round up in the next 2 minutes. I also want to appreciate every person that has, taken time out of their Saturday afternoon or evening to join us in this meeting. I'm sure that we have all been blessed. We have received, manifold wisdom even during this time. I especially want to welcome those that are, joining us for the very first time. Yeah. So somebody invited you to this meeting and this is your first time. We appreciate you. We acknowledge, that you have joined us for the first time. Linda, thank you for joining us. I know you showed your face a little earlier.
I know it was. Oh my goodness, this was so refreshing and everything. God bless all of you. And I'm praying that you have some kind of smaller section for the men, because I think our men are suffering so much. I don't think they have enough guidance and directions. I'm hoping and I'm praying that there's some kind of smaller subsection for them, but
yes,
it was grateful. Thank you.
Let me just come in, Linda, very quickly. We have a sister fellowship that is called the Iron Men Group, and it's basically a men's fellowship. And we also meet once a month, the last Saturday of every month. So, Linda, what you can do, my wife is going to announce the WhatsApp group for PPN. This is PPN, Parenting Plus Network. If you join that group, you can see all the programs we have once the flyers are out. There's going to be another program for the men next week, Saturday. That is the Iron Men Group. And the flyers and the advertorials are going to be on the platform, the PPN platform, by the grace of God. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Linda, for joining us. And any other first timer, today was your first time of joining us. Christiana, I think today was your first time.
Christiana, are you there? Can you show your face?
Okay, Christiana?
Yes, no, this is not my first time.
Okay.
I see your face.
Looks like there are two Christianas. I'm also Christiana too. So I'm joining from the United States of Ohio. One of my friends invited me.
Oh, wow. Thank you for joining us. I trust that you had a very, engaging time today, and we look forward to the opportunity to be able to, be of blessing to you. Abosede, I think you said today is your first time You're welcome. We appreciate you joining us. So we have a WhatsApp group for the Parenting Plus Network. We recognize that a lot of people are in different groups, but what we seek to do through this WhatsApp group is just to be able to, help to sharpen ourselves. And we just use that WhatsApp group to post information. So oftentimes my husband, sometimes in his study, comes across articles, comes across, information, videos that are targeted towards parenting and family life, and he uses that platform to be able to disseminate it. So basically, that's what we use that platform to. It's very streamlined. There is no marketing. There is no, no all those gists that are funny, all those funny, no funny clips and everything like that. All that we have on that platform is, encouraging words, articles, information that can help us, because realize that our parenting is an ongoing endeavor. It's not something we do only one Saturday in the month and then we keep it on hold. So we just want to be able to, encourage ourselves throughout the whole month. And so we have that platform. So if you're a first timer here, you would like to, be added to that platform, you could just type in your a private message to me, your phone number, and then we could add you to the chat group. And of course, you'll be able to get the resources that we all have the opportunity to get. So yeah, like my husband said, our next meeting is on the third Saturday of the month of April. By now, everybody should have circled the third Saturday of every month and realize that the PPM meeting holds every third Saturday at 2 p.m. So we look forward to once again hosting each and every one of us. And we'll be in we will also be in touch with and Dr. Stanley, so that we'll be able to get when he will be available to do a part 2 of today's training. I also want to thank Ayodele Ofi. I believe today is your first time of joining us.
Please bring him up.
We are happy to have you. David Adeyonju is your first time of joining us. Can you put on your video and say warm hello to everyone? If this is your first time of joining us, can you just put on your video? Yeah, so put on your video if today is your first time, so that we can see you and acknowledge you. We appreciate every person that has taken time to join us today, and we trust that you will join us again in the nearest future, the next meeting. Hi, Ayo, nice to see you.
Good evening. Well, good afternoon to you, and thanks for setting this up. It's been a very, very lovely seminar, very insightful and impactful, and I pray God continue to use you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayo. Thank you, Folu. This is your first time of coming.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This is really nice. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you guys for putting this together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome also. Today is your first day. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. We appreciate that you have confidence in this ministry to hook up you onto this seminar. We trust that you have been blessed, and we also encourage you to to share with your network of parents, to your friends that are parents, that are expectant parents, so that we can all learn together and grow together. So without taking too much of our time again, I just want to say thank you once again. We are pulling up the numbers that have been posted, for people that want to be added to the WhatsApp group, and we thank you all for coming. Have a blessed rest of the weekend and a great week ahead, and looking forward to seeing you on the 17th of April. Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. God bless you. We love you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can put on your face and wave and just say your bye-byes before you exit the meeting.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Balale. Hi.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful session. Thank you, sir.
Oh, God bless you, my sister.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Some
you
people
so
were
much.
trying to judge our parenting style. This is one.
Oh, great.
Okay, the one is dropping on our parenting style.
Yeah, so we've been asking them that they should tell the truth. What exactly are we?
Abio, we have to get our scorecards today.
They are very wise. They said we're balanced, but I think it's because they're wise. We'll never know the truth.
Oh dear. Kayode, how are you? Unmute yourself.
Hey, wonderful, wonderful.
Good to have you.
Wonderful. This is Kayode from UK.
Hey,
wonderful.
Reverend Adeyanju, how are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, bro.
Yeah.
Wonderful time, Yemi. Wonderful, wonderful. God bless you.
Praise.
Yeah, thank God.
So I'm going to. I don't need your permission to add you to the group, Reverend Ade.
No. I will send Ronke's number too.
Yes, okay. Please do.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth Adebola. Thank you for joining. Shola, David, Bro David, Dolapo, Biyi, Agedo, and Noah Sass. I hope I pronounced it right. Okay, Mute, thanks for joining. Brother Lanre, we didn't hear your voice throughout this meeting, no. Show your face.